Hi everybody, welcome back. I'm Naya, founder of EcoWellCo. I never said that in the first video, but anyway, that's what I do. And we're gonna talk about fear today, and something that came to me during my walk the other day about fear and about emotions in general, but specifically I was having a conversation with fear. And that's what this is about, conversations with fear. Conversations with anger, conversations with anxiety, conversations with emotions. I think a lot of time, at least in my own experience, it's like, oh, I want to avoid the feeling. I want to avoid the way that fear feels in my body, the way that my brain starts to spiral and my thinking goes out of control and the memories that it brings up and just it fight or flight, like freeze. My body's like, oh no, I don't want to deal with this. Right? So I'm going to avoid it. I'm going to distract myself. I'm going to somehow do something so that I don't have to experience this fear. But just like how we love to feel joy, we love to feel at ease, we love to feel content and happy and all these different things, or even if we love to feel anger and hatred or whatever it is, the emotion that we're experiencing, we're having a relationship with every single one of these emotions, every single one of these feelings and experiences. They don't have to dictate our life, right? That's when we learn emotional regulation, self-control, etc. But they are a relationship. They are their own thing. And when I was on my walk the other day and I was really beginning to break down fear, because at least for me and my history of just having a lot of anxiety and not wanting to feel the anxiety, not something triggering me and me just, like I'm avoiding it, I'm trying to distract myself. I realized that in my process of trying to avoid the fear and stop the anxiety and do all these different things, I'm denying it the opportunity to be known, to be seen. I'm denying it the opportunity to have a conversation with me, because fear obviously clearly has something to tell me. And if I keep avoiding it like the plague, then am I even giving myself the opportunity to understand what it is even trying to tell me? And actually, what if I give it the space to speak and to say what it needs to say to me? Would I even still carry it in the same way? Would I still give the fear the same amount of power over me, over my thoughts, over my body, over the circumstance, if I keep avoiding it? Because if I keep avoiding it, it's just going to stay there. It's going to stay there until I give it the space to be heard. Just like how happiness wants to be experienced, joy wants to be experienced, fear wants to also be experienced. It's here for a reason. What is the reason? Can we give ourselves the opportunity to ask fear, why are you here? What do you want? What are you trying to tell me? I recognized the other day that if I sat and I allowed myself to, in the moment that fear comes, ask it, why are you here? What do you want? What do you want me to know? It changes the situation. Matter of fact, I'm going to read y'all something. I was doing some research yesterday to learn a little bit more about fear. I've done a little bit of research about fear over the years. I was running the Meditation Matters podcast for a while, so I used to talk about fear, anxiety, depression, all these different things, as it was an avenue to help me process these big emotions, right? But this is from the Northwestern Medical Center, written by Zachary Sikora, who is a clinical psychologist there. And they talk about fear is physical. Right? So let's go a little bit into the biology of fear. Fear is experienced in your mind, but it triggers a strong physical reaction in your body. As soon as you recognize fear, your amygdala, which is a small organ in the middle of your brain, goes to work. It alerts your nervous system, which sets your body's fear response into motion. Stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline are released. Your blood pressure and heart rate increase. You start breathing faster. Even your blood flow changes. Blood actually flows away from your heart and into your limbs, making it easier for you to start throwing punches or running for your life or doing whatever it is you need to do. This is what we call the fight or flight. Your body is in preparation for this. So the moment we feel fear is the moment that our body is like, oh, let me go prepare the body to handle whatever the brain has perceived to be a threat. And what's interesting about fear, now this is another excerpt that comes from another article from the Healing Work Foundation. It's titled Fear, Fast and Slow, written by Wayne Jonas. And I thought that this would be great to include right after the description of fear being physical, the biology of it. And they say sometimes we can't return to a life without fear, even if the threat and its consequences have disappeared. So before I keep going, this is going to be the difference between what we call a quick fear response and then fear that's gradual, that sticks around, slow fear, that just doesn't kind of go away. It's almost latched to us like a sticky glue. There's going to be some instances, right, where we're like, oh, I'm in danger. There is a threat. Let me eke, if you're driving and someone's driving real crazy and going to crash into you, your brain might immediately perceive the fear before your conscious mind even comes into tune with it. And your body's going to react. So you're going to move your car out the way, or you feel like somebody is walking a little bit too close to you or whatever. You're going to start picking up your pace. You're going to do whatever you're going to divert. You're going to do what needs to be done, or you might approach somebody. Whatever it is, for one of those immediate threats, right? Fear is going to end up lasting for just as long as it needs to send the information to the rest of your body as to what to do, how to handle the fear. So that's the key. The fear comes in as a message. It's like, hey, wee-woo, something's going on, you need to protect yourself. Or something's going on, you need to protect the person next to you, your family, etc. It's a messenger. But what happens when it becomes stuck, trapped? Let's keep going. Sometimes that fear becomes attached to a physical feeling or a thought that continues, recurs, and in the process re-traumatizes us. And this is especially something where whatever maybe we fled from or our first fear indication of that thing actually turned into like some sort of like trauma. Like our body is remembering this trauma thing. And so now we're like, oh, snaps. Like our brain is not just seeing it for a one-off experience. We're like, oh, this could happen again, right? So we're learning. But what happens when we're learning, but we're sticking so tight to that learning that it becomes like a thing that is a part of us. And we're like always making sure to be mildly anxious or keen or alert about that thing, even if it may not be a big lion cat trying to eat you, right? It could be something completely different. It could be somebody said something hurtful and that puts you into a fear response. And now you begin to think that, maybe everyone is going to feel that way about me or say something hurtful to me in that way about this specific thing about me. So we begin to really latch onto it and make it super personal. This is something that I've struggled with in my life for sure, especially if it's like a repeated thing. So I'll read that sentence one more time. Sometimes that fear becomes attached to a physical feeling or a thought that continues, recurs, and in the process re-traumatizes us. And that re-traumatization is almost as if you are reliving the emotions, the feelings, the memories, everything that happened when that thing that put you into a fear response first happened. It's like repeating and replaying itself. It's like when we think about a previous past trauma and it puts us into the state of what the trauma was. I recently had a breakdown myself. I was triggered into something. I remembered all the times in which I was triggered into I remembered all the times when that thing happened, and it kept happening through my life. And the images were flashing so fast through my head, and I realized I was getting so tense and so upset that I just broke down and sobbed. Because those things that had happened, it hadn't been for some time since it happened. But I recognized that I hadn't actually processed any of that. And that, matter of fact, the fear of like, I don't even want to call it being reprimanded, but it was like the fear of betrayal, the fear of abandonment, the fear of like not being taken seriously, fear of rejection, all these different fears wrapped into this situation that just kept repeating itself and repeating itself and repeating itself, just engulfed me. And that person that I was when it first happened, and then when it happened again, and when it happened again, that person came swooshing back in. Those feelings came swooshing back in, and just, I could do nothing but break down and cry in that moment, because I wasn't necessarily in a dire situation. I wasn't in a fight or flight situation in that moment. So it was as if I knew that I could take the time to cry about it, but then I was also kind of irritated that I was still so upset about the thing. But that's the point, right? We need to process it. And so we're going to go into the next sentence here from this article. This then becomes slow fear, chronic fear, right? When it gets trapped into our physical body, into our beings, and it recurs and it re-traumatizes us. Unlike fast fear, which can save our life, right? Like we're running from a threat. Slow fear can destroy our life if we become engulfed by it. It can cause a constant state of anxiety or depression, fear to exhaustion. Repeated slow fear exhausts our adrenals, impairs our immune system, increases our chances of chronic disease, and lowers our life expectancy. The author also goes on to write, hate and anger are not the opposite of love. Holding on to fear is. Because if you think about hate and anger and you break them down, a lot of times when it comes to anger, for example, at least for myself when I do this process and I ask myself, why am I so angry at X person or X thing or at myself? I recognize that when I break down the barriers and ask myself questions, what am I angry at? Why am I angry? Is anger really a thing or is it something else? I begin to realize that I'm actually sad. And then I begin to realize that I'm afraid. And then I begin to realize that, especially for chronic anger or chronic hatred, that I'm just terrified. And I keep trying to convince myself that something specific is going to happen that's going to re-terrify me. So if I can just hold on to this anger and hold on to this resentment and hold on to this grievance with every fiber of my being, then at least I'll be strong. And I won't be engulfed by the fear. But that's the funny part, is that I actually actively being engulfed by the fear because I don't want the same thing to happen anymore. It's almost as if me not acknowledging that I'm afraid of whether it be betrayal, abandonment, rejection, judgment, etc. If I'm not willing to accept this, then I'm not willing to have a conversation with the fear to begin with, or even to go back to when the fear first started. Because it could be a buildup over time of disappointments or threats, harm that was actually done, traumas, unmet needs. But these were all things that, even if they did happen, we needed a space to express about it. You know how kids are? Kids be like, they wail, they're really expressive about something that harmed them. That's something that hurt them, something that caused them some level of pain, whether or not it be physical pain, emotional pain, etc. They express about it. They let it out. And I know that, at least for in my life, and probably in many of our lives, we've probably learned to hush, 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 deal with it later. Oof. Hush, 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 deal with it later. That's an interesting thing, right? Because I'm pushing the emotional response down. Sometimes I don't even remember what happened. Even if I black out mentally about what happened and how I may have felt and how the fear may have made me feel, it doesn't mean that my subconscious mind is not still playing out the same thing constantly. It doesn't mean that my body is not still playing out the same thing constantly. This is where somatics works comes into handy, or doing yoga, for example, of somatic work, breath work, past life regression. You can also do a hypnotherapy, talk therapy. All these different things will come to help you, because there are things that are stored in our muscles, things that are stored deep within our psyche that we may not know about. But the moment that we start actually beginning to massage these muscles and work with these things and ask certain questions, we're like, oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I didn't realize that was there. And so what happens, at least in my own experience and from what I've been learning over time, is that these things that have happened that maybe we either blacked out from or we suppressed and we didn't navigate, we didn't deal with, we didn't express, we start to see more examples of them pop up in our life. And so now they become like a belief system, a program that's running in the background of our existence. And we don't understand why we're operating in certain ways, or we think that we do, but we don't actually know. And so we start believing certain things and then building beliefs off those things, and more beliefs start being built off those things. And next thing you know, we have an entire persona, entire person that we are, that is built off this one belief that was actually built off a singular event that frightened us to the core of our being, but we never were able to express the full capacity, the emotions of that thing for whatever reason. And now it is so ingrained in our being and in our psyches that it has become us. We have overly personalized it because it is a slower fear that has gone nowhere. We have not conversed with it. We have not allowed it to communicate what exactly it needed to communicate to us, whether fast or slow. So a couple of things that I wanted to bring into this space is understanding that fear is actually very helpful, right? It is a peak survival response. All of us organisms, we have learned to have fear in some capacity so that we can actually evolve and thrive, right? So that we can continue to have offspring and exist on this planet. So that's one thing. And two, I've learned, at least in the conversation I was having with myself the other day, or the conversation I was directly actually having with fear, is that fear wants to be heard. Fear is confidently itself. It is not anything else because it is fear. It exists at the frequency of fear. Now, there are many different types of fear, but fear in and of itself is fear. Now, fear doesn't have to have full control over you. You are still a completely autonomous being outside of fear and any emotions that come with that. Same thing for the opposite. Now, but at the same time, when fear comes, it is interwoven and intermingled with us. And we have to ask ourselves, okay, fear is here. I feel the fear. Learn the feelings of fear. If it's a tension, a knot, a tingly feeling, something that happens, you're like, ugh, you start freaking out, your brain starts racing, whatever it is. Get to know the little intricacies of what it is like for you to start to feel fear. And when you feel that coming in, whether or not it's fast fear or slow fear, and slow fear is more of like an accumulation over time of experiencing fear, but like not going anywhere, right? You can begin to ask yourself, ask the fear or ask yourself, fear, what are you doing here? What do you want me to know? The moment you feel that tension, oh, okay, fear is coming in. What do you want me to know? Be willing to ask those questions. See what comes up. And then notice that if you're willing to do something about what comes up for you or about what the fear says, you get an opportunity to do something about it or not. And you also gave the fear an opportunity to speak and not necessarily overpower you. So now you get to decide what to do with this fear. The interesting part about fear, right, is that with slow fear especially, is how in an eternal way, it can continue to just run like a cyclic cycle in our brains. Our thoughts, who we think that we are, can be really built off this. And even our physical external appearance can start to be shaped around this feeling of fear. Fear can turn into inflammation, right? So we can realize that we're super bloated in our bodies. We're retaining maybe way too much water, we're not excreting properly, we're not digesting food properly, we're holding onto way too much waste, so we're bloating out, we're boop, It could also just make us extremely timid. But there is a way to also harness the information of fear. There's a way to harness that energy and actually use it to catapult ourselves into the next thing. And I actually will make a video about that later. I was somebody very briefly who would sometimes get super paralyzed by fear and not necessarily act out certain things. But as I began to work through the fears and work through some of the foundational, underlining, or governing beliefs around these fears is when I began to realize, and I was like, oh, no, wait, this is an opportunity for me to use the fear, right? To actually have a different relationship with fear. And not run from it all the time, but to sit in it and be like, especially if it's not life-threatening fear. Key. Especially if you recognize that it's not a life-threatening fear happening, then you might be able to work with it in a certain way. And of course, I recommend taking time to actually learn what fear feels like in your body, what it feels like in your mind, how you begin to tense up, what you begin to notice differently about your body, what you begin to notice, how you may think differently, whether or not it's to yourself, what your self-narrative turns into when fear is about, what your narrative in your external front, so how you speak and treat other people, and whatnot. So last part of this is I want to talk about some practices that we can do to help us return to a state of relaxation, so that we can help to ease the mental and the physical, especially when we're not dealing with life-threatening fear, which is going to be that fast fear, right? And also, even after we've experienced fast fear, which typically will last a few minutes, right, in the body, after we experience that fast fear, we can also use these same techniques to help calm us down, recenter the body, and just, navigate how we need to navigate, right? Move forward, not hold on to whatever happened in that situation, and to make sure that it doesn't turn into slow fear, which is that slowly accumulating, recurring, re-traumatizing fear, okay? So I will talk about some somatic practices and a bunch of different other ones, and this is not an exhaustive list. So that means that there is even way more practices that you can explore. And these are practices that I have also incorporated in my life throughout time, and I have them as a part of my morning routine. Sometimes they switch out, etc. Or a routine that's just needed smack dab in the middle of the day. So one of them is going to be one that I talked about in most part, is questioning it. Asking it, what does it want? Why is it here? What does it need? What does it want to tell me? 2, breath work. Breath work. Deep belly breathing, something you can start with, which is just you and your inhale, expanding your diaphragm, and then exhaling, contracting it. You can put your hand over your belly. I know you can't see my belly here, but just feel when you inhale, breathe in, and then breathe out. There's another form of breathing also in this space, and this is going to be more of like a qigong breathing style, is when you breathe in, you actually have the air, your stomach go up, and breathe out, your stomach relaxes. That is slightly differently. It does something, it's a different type of energetic breathing practice, but either or can help to calm your body. Just deep belly breaths, sending the breath from the fast-pacing breath that's up here in your chest, sending it down to your belly. And actually in the meditation that will be accompanying this video, do look out for that. That'll be accompanying very shortly. We will go through some breathing practices that will really help to calm you down, something that you can use. Another one that I really love is acupressure. So acupressure is similar to acupuncture. It's just that you're not sticking needles into yourself unless you are certified and know how to do that, whatever. But acupressure, just using your fingers, like your thumb, 2 fingers, etc. One of the main spots that I tend to use sometimes is 3 fingers from the wrist. And so you're going to come right here. I'm going to use my thumb. And so I'll just massage this point here. And they typically recommend massaging for up to 3 minutes. And you can use that deep breathing while you're massaging it. And just hold it there, massage it for as long as you can. You can change sides also. Remember, 3 fingers from the base of the wrist. And then you're going to come, so we're here. So it's going to be this point. And just come in. It's kind of like a little divot there you'll be able to feel. You could just massage that. Deep breathing. You can add in some affirmations while you're doing that practice. Other spots that you can massage. My mic is here, but the center point in your heart, there's like a little dip here. If you have one, you can massage that using your thumb, 2 fingers. I'm just using my singular middle finger here. Also breathing deeply. And you can add in some affirmations to that as well, like I'm safe, I am calm, I'm safe in my body, it's okay for me to be here, I'm at ease, whatever makes you feel more embodied, more present in this moment. Because one thing that's really important when you're feeling a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety, where are my feet? I ask myself this. I ask myself, where are my feet? Oh, my feet are right here. Oh, I'm where my feet are. That's what I'll be telling myself to get myself to calm down sometimes, especially when it's not life-threatening fear. Some other stuff that I do, inner child reassurance. This one's really nice. You can imagine that you're looking at a younger version of yourself and you're just saying, hey, babe, it's okay. I got this. You're safe with me, right? That could be a nice little visualization practice. Mindfulness practices, an example of that can be like a body scan. So you can notice where you feel tense and tight in your body, and you can send some like loving universal life force energy to it. You can just send some love to it, just breathe into it or anything. You can imagine also that like whatever is tensing up that area, that it's like draining out of you, kind of like gunky water, or like it's gray smoke, or butterflies are leaving that space, whatever makes you feel good. You can imagine that on every exhale, the fear is leaving your body, the tension is leaving your body. On every inhale, you're bringing in more of this universal light and life force energy into your body to help calm and ease that. And you can repeat that for a couple of rounds and just going to the different areas in your body where you're feeling tense. Shaking. I don't know if you've ever seen like shaking in Qigong. Here, I'll do an example. So this is like a little bit of shaking. This the floor is shaking as well with me, but hey. So this is shaking. You let your shoulders shake. You shake out your hands. And then you're bouncing on your heels, so your heels are gently tapping the floor. And you're just feeling your body just shake and let it go. Shaking is actually something that animals do sometimes. Some animals will do after they've gone through some sort of traumatizing event. They will shake. Shake, shake, shake. Rocking also. Sometimes you might notice some people wrap their arms around themselves and rock. Self-soothing, self-resourcing, psychedelics. Especially if you can do it with someone who knows what they're doing. Psychedelics can help a lot, especially if you're into like microdosing. But I do recommend doing it with someone who knows what they're doing, who can actually help you through the process. Don't necessarily just get all willy-nilly with it, because it can get weird if you're not careful. Last but not least, oh my God, wailing, yelling, crying, screaming. Very, very helpful, very, very useful. Especially if you need to process a lot of anger, a lot of sadness. Yelling and screaming and wailing can really help. I know some people have like those rage rooms. Yeah, you can bang stuff and yell, or you could just go out in the middle of the street. I don't know, like be careful, but sometimes you can yell into your pillow. Sometimes I punch the pillow. I'd be like, my bad, pillow, I need you right now. Scream and shout, let it all out. If you don't want to yell, you can also hum. So humming really helps to calm the nervous system. It's one of my favorite things to do. You'll see me sometimes just like cleaning the dishes or doing whatever I need to do in the house, and I'll be just humming. And those are some of the things that I like to do. These are things that like, oh God, imagine if you learned all of this when you were a child, or like weren't reprimanded for doing this stuff when you were a kid, right? Because maybe some of us were already doing them. Because as children, we already knew how to regulate our nervous systems, if you think about it. But some of us may have been told, no, you're being too loud, or blah, 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 blah. You're drawing too much attention to yourself. Blah, blah, blah. I don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, I clearly got beef. So return to some of these practices that we may see 3-year-olds running around doing, right? Like maybe they got into a fight with each other. Next thing you know, they over there hugging it out. 3-year-olds are also teachers. We should consider the lessons that we can see from them and how they process their feelings and emotions, the way that they're so expressive and willing to tell the truth. Anyway, as we learned how to come into deeper unison with ourselves, with our bodies, with these different beings like fear, and with these different energies like fear and happiness and love and joy and all these different things, may we be able to learn to create space for all parts of ourselves, every single part, even the part that you don't want to deal with. Create space for it to be and exist, because it deserves to be, and it deserves to exist. It deserves to know. It deserves to be given a spot. It deserves for you to ask it questions. What you doing here? What you want to know? What do you want to tell me? What do you want? Let all parts of yourself be seen, loved on. Give fear an opportunity to tell you what it's trying to tell you. Because, baby, let me tell you something. We all deserve an opportunity to really live a light-filled life, a lively life, a life well-lived, a life not so steeped in fear, pain, inconsistent, recurring suffering and aggression that we not only put onto ourselves, but then everyone else, onto our children, onto our friends and families, onto a random person on the street, onto our animals, onto Mother Nature as a whole, which we are a part of, by the way. We all deserve the opportunity to exist here together and to live in a consistent state of joy and abundance and ease that actually comes very naturally to us. Feel the fear. Ask the fear what it's got going on, what it wants. Decide what you want to do about it. Decide what you want to do about it. Do whatever about it that needs to be done. Give it space and then move on, especially with the slow fear, that fear that has accumulated over time. Even if we weren't responsible for what happened to us, we have the choice to do something about it. Seek help, please do. Seek a therapist. Any license. I'm not a licensed practitioner in any way. I'm just coming from my own experience here. But I just felt like this was really important to share. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. If you would like to share any of your experiences in the comment section, or if you recently had a fear-based experience and you decided to ask fear, what are you doing here? What do you want? And you want to share what came up for you, please share. I'm very curious. Thank you so much for listening. And as always, much love. Peace, family. Keep your head up, and always more to come.